The stars had always been kind to the Velen people. For thousands of years, they had traveled the black emptiness between worlds, trading songs and stories with other peaceful species. They had never built weapons. They had never needed to. The galaxy, they believed, was a place of wonder and friendship. Ambassador Yelthari had believed this too. She had spent her entire life proving it. 60 cycles of diplomatic missions, 60 cycles of building bridges between species who had never met, 60 cycles of trust. Now, as she stood on the bridge of the Singing Meridian and watched 6 enemy warships circle her vessel like hungry beasts, she understood how foolish she had been. The attack had come without warning. One moment, the Singing Meridian had been traveling through the Korath expanse, carrying 2,000 Velen civilians back to their homeworld. The next moment, the ship had shaken like a leaf in a storm. Alarms had screamed, lights had flickered and died, and through the viewports, Yelthari had seen them emerge from the darkness. Sketh, Dominion cruisers, 6 of them. Each one was 3 times the size of her diplomatic vessel. Each one was covered in weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Each one carried hundreds of warriors who saw other species not as friends or neighbors, but as resources to be harvested. The Sketh were not interested in trade. They were not interested in peace. They were interested in bodies. Living bodies. Bodies they could use to grow their young. Yelthari's thin fingers gripped the railing of the command platform. Her skin, which normally glowed with soft blue light, had gone pale and dim. Around her, the bridge crew worked in terrified silence, trying to restore systems that had been destroyed by the first attack. "Status report," she said. Her voice was calm, but only because she had practiced being calm for 60 cycles. Inside, she was screaming. First, Navigator Corin looked up from his console. He was young, barely 20 cycles old. His bioluminescent patterns flickered with barely controlled fear. "Ambassador, we have lost main power. Backup systems are failing. Life support will last maybe 6 more hours. Engines are completely destroyed." He paused, and his light dimmed even further. "We cannot run. We cannot fight. We cannot even call for help. They are jamming all our signals." Yelthari closed her eyes. 2,000 civilians, families, children, elders who had lived peaceful lives and deserved peaceful deaths. All of them were going to die here, in the cold darkness between stars. Or worse, much worse. "All signals?" she asked. Corin checked his readings again. "Almost all. There is one frequency they are not blocking. But Ambassador, that frequency is..." He stopped. His patterns went completely dark for a moment. "That is the old frequency. The forbidden one." Yelthari knew exactly which frequency he meant. Every species in the Galactic Council knew about it. It was taught in schools. It was written in warning signs at the edges of certain star systems. It was whispered about in the dark corners of space stations, where travelers shared stories of things they had seen and wished they had not. The frequency that reached the humans. She turned to look at the main view screen. One of the Sketh cruisers was moving closer. Through its transparent sections, she could see movement. Hundreds of warriors preparing for boarding, preparing to cut through her ship's hull and take her people. "Ambassador," Corin said, his voice shaking, "you cannot be thinking of using that signal. The humans are. The stories about them." "I know the stories," Yelthari replied quietly. Everyone knew the stories. The humans came from a world called Earth, a planet that the Galactic Council had classified as a Category 12 death world. The highest category, a world so dangerous that simply surviving there was considered impossible by most species. Earth had crushing gravity that would break Velen bones like dry sticks. It had an atmosphere filled with a gas called oxygen, which was basically a slow-burning poison that the humans actually needed to breathe. It had water that fell from the sky and covered most of the surface. It had extreme temperatures, violent weather, and thousands of species that existed only to kill and eat other species. And the humans had not just survived there. They had conquered it. They had tamed predators and made them into pets. They had built cities in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. They had created medicines from poisons and turned their world's deadliest creatures into food. Then they had reached the stars. And the galaxy had learned to fear them. The Galactic Council had one official rule about humans. Do not provoke them. Do not challenge them. Do not, under any circumstances, ask them for help unless every other option has failed. Because when humans came to help, they did not come gently. They came with fire and metal and a determination that bordered on madness. Corin stepped closer to Yelthari. His voice was barely a whisper. Ambassador, the council says the humans are monsters. They say that asking them for help is like asking a hurricane to save you from a storm. Yes, the storm might end, but the hurricane might destroy everything. And the Sketh? Yelthari asked. What will they do to us, Corin? Tell me. You have read the reports. You know what happens to species they capture. Corin was silent. He knew. Everyone knew. The Sketh used other species as hosts for their eggs. They would take the Velan prisoners, keep them alive, and let their larvae grow inside them. It was a death that lasted weeks. A death filled with unimaginable pain. I am choosing, Yelthari said slowly, between two monsters. One will definitely destroy us. The other might show mercy. She turned back to the console. Prepare the signal. Ambassador, please. I have made my decision. First Navigator. Yelthari's voice was firm now. I will not let our children be used as incubators. I will not let our elders die screaming in Sketh larvae pools. If the humans are truly monsters, then at least they will give us a quick death. And, if the stories are wrong. She paused. If the stories are wrong, then maybe we will live. Corin stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. His patterns brightened just slightly. Not with hope, exactly, but with something. Acceptance, perhaps, or trust. I will prepare the signal, he said. As he worked, Yelthari looked around the bridge at her crew. 12, Velan, all of them terrified, all of them trying to be brave. Beyond the bridge, in the passenger sections of the ship, 2,000 more waited. Families huddled together in the darkness. Parents told their children that everything would be fine, knowing it was a lie. Young couples held each other and whispered words of love, believing they were saying goodbye. Yelthari thought about her own family. Her partner, waiting back home. Her 3 children, who had wanted to come on this trip but had been told they were too young. She had promised them she would bring back gifts from the outer colonies. She had promised them she would be home soon. Now she might never see them again, unless the monsters answered her call. The signal is ready, Corin said. Ambassador, once we send this, there is no taking it back. The Sketh will know we called for human help. They will be angry. They are already planning to kill us all. How much angrier can they get? Corin did not have an answer for that. Yelthari walked to the communications console. The button to send the signal was small and plain. It did not look like something that could change the fate of 2,000 lives, but it was. It was exactly that. She placed her finger on the button. Then she paused. Computer, she said. Record a message to be attached to the distress signal. The computer beeped in acknowledgement. Yelthari took a deep breath. This is Ambassador Yelthari of the Velan Collective, aboard the diplomatic vessel Singing Meridian. We are under attack by Sketh Dominion forces in the Korath Expanse. Our ship is disabled. We have 2,000 civilians on board, including 300 children. We cannot fight. We cannot run. We are going to die unless someone helps us. She paused, feeling the weight of her next words. I am sending this message on a frequency I was told never to use. I am asking for help from a species I was told never to contact. I do not know if this will save us or doom us, but I know that doing nothing will doom us for certain. Please, if anyone hears this, please help us. She ended the recording. For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Even the distant sounds of the damaged ship seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then Yelthari pressed the button. The signal shot out from the Singing Meridian at the speed of light. It traveled through the jamming field of the Sketh ships as if it did not exist. It passed through clouds of cosmic dust and radiation. It crossed the vast emptiness between star systems, carrying with it the desperate hope of 2,000 souls. 17 light-years away, in a region of space that most species avoided, the signal found its destination. The United Earth ship Perseverance was the flagship of the 7th Expeditionary Force. It was not a large ship by human standards. It was not fancy or beautiful. It was built for one purpose: to survive in places that would destroy other vessels. Its hull was thick and scarred. Its engines burned fuel that would be considered toxic waste by most species. Its crew quarters were cramped and functional, with none of the luxuries that other spacefaring species considered necessary. Admiral Chen Wei-lin sat in the captain's chair, drinking her third cup of coffee of the day. The coffee was terrible. It was always terrible. Somehow, no matter how advanced human technology became, ship coffee remained awful. It was almost comforting in its consistency. Around her, the bridge crew went about their duties. Navigation tracked nearby asteroid fields. Sensors monitored for unusual activity. Communications listened to the endless chatter of the cosmos. It was routine work. Boring work. The kind of work that made soldiers complain about nothing ever happening. Chen preferred it that way. She had seen enough action in her 40 years of service. She had fought pirates and rebels and hostile alien species. She had lost friends and soldiers and sometimes her faith in humanity itself. Now, at 62 years old, she was happy to patrol quiet sectors and drink bad coffee and count the days until retirement. Then the signal arrived. It came through the speakers like a scream. The old frequency, the one that humanity had established centuries ago when they first made contact with the galaxy. The one that was only used when there was no other option. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo looked up from her console, her eyes wide. "Admiral, we are receiving a distress call. It is on the emergency frequency." Chen set down her coffee. The emergency frequency. In her 40 years, she had heard it used exactly 3 times. Twice for natural disasters. Once for a first contact situation that had gone wrong. Every time, it had meant something terrible was happening. "Put it through," she ordered. Ambassador Yelthari's voice filled the bridge. The alien language was translated automatically by the ship's computer. But even through the translation, Chen could hear the fear, the desperation, the hope that was almost worse than despair, because it meant the person sending the message still believed they could be saved. When the message ended, the bridge was silent. Every crew member had stopped what they were doing. Every eye was on the Admiral. Chen stood up slowly. She walked to the main view screen and looked out at the stars. 17 light-years away, 2,000 people were going to die. They were not human. They were not allies. They were strangers who had sent a message into the void, hoping someone would care enough to answer. "How long to reach them?" she asked. Okonkwo checked her calculations. "At standard cruise speed, 14 hours. If we push the engines to maximum, we can make it in 6. But Admiral, that would be dangerous. The reactors were not designed for. They were designed on Earth," Chen interrupted. "They can handle it." She turned to face her crew. They were watching her, waiting for orders. Some of them were young, new to the service, still believing in adventure and glory. Others were veterans like her, scarred and tired, knowing exactly what a mission like this would cost. "I am not going to order anyone to do this," Chen said. "This is not our war. These are not our people. The Galactic Council has made it very clear that they do not want our help unless absolutely necessary. We could ignore this signal. We could report it to command and wait for official orders. No one would blame us." She paused. Let the silence stretch. "But I did not become a soldier to ignore people who need help. I did not spend 40 years in this uniform to sit in a chair and drink bad coffee while children die 17 light-years away. If you feel differently, I understand. But I am going to save those people. And I am asking you to come with me." For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, the bridge crew turned back to their stations. Fingers flew over keyboards. Engines began to power up. Weapons systems came online. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo smiled. "Course plotted. Admiral. Ready to jump on your command." Chen nodded. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. 12 ships, 3,000 personnel, all of them listening to her voice. "This is Admiral Chen to all hands. We have received a distress call from a civilian vessel under attack by Sketh Dominion forces. 2,000 lives are at risk. We are going to save them." She took a breath. "I know what the galaxy says about us. I know they call us monsters, Deathworlders. They think we are dangerous, violent, unpredictable. Maybe they are right. But there is one thing they always forget about humans. We do not abandon people who ask for help. We do not ignore cries for mercy. When someone reaches out their hand in the darkness, we reach back. That is who we are. That is what makes us human." She looked at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, an alien ambassador was watching enemy ships circle her vessel, wondering if her message had been received, wondering if anyone was coming. "All ships, Chen ordered. Jump to FTL. Maximum speed. We have people to save. The fleet jumped. The stars blurred into rivers of light. And humanity came. On the singing meridian, Ambassador Yelthari had no way of knowing her message had been received. The jamming field still surrounded her ship. The Sketh cruisers were still circling. In a few hours, they would begin their boarding operation, and everything would be over. She sat in her chair on the bridge and watched the enemy ships through the viewports. Corin stood beside her, his bioluminescence dim and flickering. "Do you think they heard?" he asked quietly. Yelthari did not answer for a long time. Then, finally, she said, "I do not know, but I hope so. I hope that somewhere out there, someone is coming." Corin nodded. "The stories about humans," he said slowly. "They are not all about violence. Some of them are about other things. Strange things. Things I never understood." "What do you mean?" "There is a story about a human ship that found a colony of Tethri who had been stranded by an engine failure. The Tethri were dying. They had no food, no water, no power. The human ship was on an important mission. They did not have time to stop. They did not have supplies to spare. What did they do?" Corin's patterns flickered with something that might have been wonder. "They stopped anyway. They gave the Tethri half their food, half their water, half their power. They were late for their mission. Their commanders were furious. But when asked why they did it, the human captain said something strange. He said, because they needed help. And we were there. That was all. No complicated reason, no political calculation. Just because they could help. And so they did." Yelthari considered this. "Do you think that story is true?" "I do not know. But I hope so." Corin looked at the viewports. "I hope that somewhere out there are beings who help strangers simply because they can. And I hope they heard our message." Yelthari reached out and touched his arm. "Then we will hope together. And we will wait." They waited. Hours passed. The Sketh ships grew closer. The darkness pressed in from all sides. And somewhere in the void, 12 human ships burned through space, racing toward a people they had never met, carrying with them the terrible mercy of Earth. The engines of the Perseverance screamed as they pushed beyond their normal limits. Deep in the ship, the reactor core burned hotter than the surface of most stars. Warning lights flashed on engineering consoles. Alarms beeped and chirped and demanded attention, and the crew ignored them all, because they had a job to do. Chief Engineer Maria Vasquez stood in the center of the engine room, surrounded by her team of 30 technicians. Sweat dripped down her face. Her hands were black with grease and coolant. She had not slept in 18 hours, and she had no plans to sleep for many more. "Reactor temperature?" she called out. 92% of maximum." "Chief," one of her technicians reported. "We are still in the safe zone. Barely. Keep it there. I want every drop of power we can get without actually blowing ourselves up." The technician nodded and returned to his work. Around the engine room, others did the same. They monitored gauges and adjusted settings and replaced parts that were wearing out too fast. They worked in perfect coordination, like a single organism with 30 pairs of hands. Vasquez had served on the Perseverance for 15 years. She knew this engine, like she knew her own body. She knew every sound it made, every vibration, every quirk and weakness. When other engineers said the reactor could not handle maximum speed for more than an hour, she had laughed. This reactor had been built by humans, for humans. It was tough. It was stubborn. It refused to die, just like the people who built it. Her communicator buzzed. Admiral Chen's voice came through clearly. "Engineering, what is our status?" "We are holding, Admiral. The engines are unhappy, but they will do what we ask." "How much longer?" 4 more hours at this speed." "Can you give me that?" Vasquez looked at her team. They were tired. They were stressed. They were pushing themselves and their equipment to the absolute limit. And every single one of them nodded. 4 hours, Admiral. You will have it." "Thank you, Chief." Chen out. The communication ended. Vasquez turned back to her team and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "You heard the Admiral. 4 more hours. I know you are tired. I know this is hard. But somewhere out there, 2,000 people are waiting for us. 2,000 people who sent a message into the void, hoping someone would answer. We are that answer. So let us show them what human engineering can do." A cheer went up from the team. It was not a loud cheer. They did not have the energy for that. But it was real. and it was determined, and it said everything that needed to be said. They returned to their work. The engines continued to scream, and the Perseverance flew on. On the bridge, Admiral Chen stood before the main view screen, watching the blur of stars. Her hands were clasped behind her back in the pose she always took when she was thinking. Her face showed nothing of her thoughts, but inside, her mind was racing. She had studied the Sketh Dominion. She knew their tactics, their weapons, their psychology. They were predators in the truest sense of the word. They did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They saw the universe as divided into two categories: Sketh and prey. 6 cruisers against her 12 ships. On paper, the numbers favored the humans, but Chen knew better than to trust paper. Sketh cruisers were heavily armed and armored. Her fleet was made up of frigates and destroyers, smaller and more agile, but less powerful in a straight fight. If she tried to engage them in a traditional battle, she would lose, so she would not engage them in a traditional battle. "Commander Okonkwo," she said, not turning from the view screen. "What do we know about the civilian vessel?" Okonkwo pulled up the information on her console. "It is a Velen diplomatic ship called the Singing Meridian. Standard passenger configuration, no weapons, minimal shields. Hull integrity is not great, according to the distress signal. They took significant damage in the initial attack. How many life forms aboard? 2,000, according to the ambassador's message, including 300 children. 300 children." Chen closed her eyes for a moment. She had grandchildren of her own. The thought of them on a disabled ship, surrounded by enemies, waiting to be taken, it made something cold and hard settle in her chest, something that had been sleeping for years, ever since she had accepted this quiet posting on the edge of known space. The wolf was waking up. "The Sketh," she said. "What is their formation?" "Standard siege pattern. They have surrounded the civilian vessel in a sphere, with overlapping fields of fire. Anyone who approaches will be caught in a crossfire from at least 3 ships, which means they are confident. They think no one is coming, or if someone does come, they think they can handle it." Chen finally turned from the view screen. Her eyes were sharp now, focused. "They have never fought humans before, have they?" Okonkwo checked her records. "No, Admiral. The Sketh Dominion operates mainly in the outer territories. They have had minor conflicts with the Galactic Council, but the Council has always backed down. This is the first time they have attacked anyone in a region where we patrol. They picked the wrong region." Chen walked to the tactical display in the center of the bridge. The holographic image showed the Korath expanse, with the Singing Meridian at the center, and 6 red dots surrounding it. Her own fleet was shown as 12 blue dots, approaching rapidly from the galactic west. "Here is what we are going to do," she said. "Standard siege formations rely on predictable enemy behavior. The Sketh expect any rescuers to stop at long range, assess the situation, and try to negotiate. That gives them time to prepare, to adjust their formation, to take hostages if necessary." She touched the display, and the blue dots began to move. "We are not going to do any of that. We are going to drop out of FTL at close range, directly into their formation, and we are going to attack immediately. No stopping, no negotiating, no time for them to think." The bridge crew exchanged glances. What the Admiral was describing was incredibly dangerous. Dropping out of FTL near enemy ships required precise calculations. One small error could result in collision, or worse, materializing inside an enemy vessel. Lieutenant Park, the weapons officer, spoke up carefully. "Admiral, if I may, dropping out at close range means we will not have time to raise full shields. Our weapons will need several seconds to charge. We will be vulnerable." "Yes," Chen agreed. "But so will they. The Sketh are not expecting us to be insane. That is our advantage." She smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "The galaxy thinks we are monsters. Let us prove them right." The crew was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, they began to smile as well. Not because they wanted violence, not because they enjoyed killing, but because they understood something that the Sketh did not. Humans were at their most dangerous when they were protecting someone. "All ships," Chen ordered, "prepare for combat drop. I want weapons hot the moment we exit FTL. Target their engines first. A Sketh without engines is just a big target. Marines, stand by for boarding operations. We are not just going to beat these monsters. We are going to take their ships." Across the fleet, The order was received and understood. On each of the 12 vessels, men and women prepared for battle. They checked their weapons. They sealed their armor. They said quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in. Some of them wrote messages to loved ones, just in case. Others made dark jokes, because laughter was better than fear. In the Marine Bay of the Perseverance, Sergeant Major Aisha Diallo stood before her squad of 30 soldiers. They were the best of the best, hand-picked for dangerous missions. They had fought pirates and terrorists and alien warlords. They had earned more medals than they could count, and scars that medals could never represent. But they had never fought Sketh. "Listen up," Diallo said, her voice cutting through the noise of the bay. "I am not going to give you a speech about courage and duty. You already know that stuff. What I am going to tell you is this. The enemy we are about to face is big, mean, and ugly. They have natural armor. They have poison. They have a lot of experience killing things that cannot fight back." She paused, looking at each of her soldiers in turn. "But they have never killed humans. They have never faced a species that evolved on a world where everything wanted to eat us. They have never fought people who invented war before they invented writing. They think they are the predators here. They are wrong." One of the younger Marines, a corporal named Jackson, raised his hand. "Sergeant Major," the briefing said, "each Sketh warrior is 3 meters tall and has 8 limbs. How are we supposed to fight that?" Diallo smiled. It was the smile of a predator. "Same way our ancestors fought everything else on Earth that was bigger than us. We are faster, smarter, and meaner. We work as a team. We cover each other. And we do not stop until every last one of them is down. And if we get hurt, then you keep fighting until you cannot fight anymore. And then you keep fighting some more. Because somewhere on that civilian ship, there are 300 children who are counting on us. And I am not going to let them down. Are you?" "No, Sergeant Major." "I did not hear you." "No, Sergeant Major." Diallo nodded in satisfaction. "Good. Now gear up. We drop in 2 hours." The Marines dispersed to prepare. Diallo watched them go, pride swelling in her chest. These were good soldiers, the best she had ever commanded. Whatever happened in the coming battle, she knew they would give everything they had. She turned to her own equipment and began the ritual of preparation. Armor first, piece by piece, checking each seal and connection. Then weapons, her rifle, customized with modifications she had made herself over years of service, her sidearm, an old-fashioned projectile pistol that her grandmother had carried in the wars of Earth, her knife, simple and deadly, for when things got personal. As she worked, her mind drifted to the civilians they were going to rescue. She did not know the Villan. She had never met one. But she knew fear. She knew desperation. She knew what it felt like to wait in the darkness, hoping for salvation that might never come. Years ago, when she was just a child, her village had been attacked by raiders. She remembered hiding in a cellar with her mother and siblings, listening to the screams outside. She remembered praying for help, for anyone to come and save them. Help had come. Soldiers, not much different from the ones she now commanded, had arrived and driven the raiders away. They had saved her life. They had given her a future. Now it was her turn to do the same. On the bridge, Admiral Chen received updates from across the fleet. All ships reported ready. All weapons were charged. All Marines were prepared. The moment was approaching. She sat back in her chair and allowed herself a moment of doubt. It was a luxury she rarely permitted, but she was old enough to know that doubt was not weakness. It was wisdom. Only fools were never uncertain. 2,000 lives depended on her decisions. If she made a mistake, people would die. Maybe all of them. Maybe her own crew as well. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her like the gravity of a dozen worlds. But she had carried that weight before. She had made hard decisions and lived with the consequences. That was what command meant. Not glory or power, but responsibility. The willingness to bear the burden so others did not have to. "Admiral," Okonkwo said, breaking into her thoughts. "We are approaching the drop point. 30 minutes to contact." Chen nodded. She stood and straightened her uniform. The time for doubt was over. Now was the time for action. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. The communication officer complied. "Channel open, Admiral." Chen took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady, the voice of someone who had faced death many times and never blinked. "This is Admiral Chen to all hands. In 30 minutes, We will drop out of FTL and engage the enemy. I will not lie to you. This will be dangerous. Some of us may not survive, but I want you to remember why we are here. We are not here for glory. We are not here for revenge. We are here because 2,000 innocent people are about to die, and we are the only ones who can stop it." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The galaxy calls us Deathworlders. They say we are violent. They say we are dangerous. They say we are monsters. And maybe they are right. But there is something they always forget. Monsters can be villains, or they can be guardians. They can destroy, or they can protect. Today, we choose what kind of monsters we will be. Today, we protect. All hands battle stations, let us show the Sketh what happens when they threaten people under our protection." She ended the transmission. Around her, the bridge crew worked with renewed focus and determination. Whatever fear they felt was buried beneath a layer of purpose. The minutes ticked by. The blur of FTL travel began to slow as they approached their destination. Chen watched the countdown on the main display. 20 minutes, 15, 10. All weapons charged and ready, Lieutenant Park reported. Marines standing by, another officer added. Shields at full power. A third confirmed. 5 minutes. Chen stood and walked to the front of the bridge, as close to the view screen as she could get. She wanted to see the moment they arrived. She wanted to look her enemies in the eye. 3 minutes. All hands, she announced. Brace for combat drop. 1 minute. The stars stopped blurring. Reality snapped back into focus, and the Perseverance, along with 11 other human warships, burst out of FTL directly in the middle of the Sketh formation. For one perfect moment, everything was still. The Sketh cruisers hung in space, massive and deadly, surrounding the tiny disabled vessel they had been hunting. The singing Meridian drifted helplessly, its hull cracked and dark, and between them, appearing as if from nowhere, was the fleet of humanity. Then the moment ended, and hell broke loose. "All ships, open fire," Chen commanded. The space around the singing Meridian erupted in light and fury. Human weapons, designed to punch through armor and shields, slammed into Sketh cruisers that had not even raised their defenses. Explosions bloomed across enemy hulls. Debris flew in all directions. The Sketh tried to respond, but they were confused, disoriented. They had been expecting negotiation, not attack. They had been expecting fear, not fury. By the time their commanders regained control, 2 of their cruisers were already crippled, engines destroyed, drifting helplessly. On the bridge of the Perseverance, Chen watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. The plan was working. The Sketh were off balance, but she knew better than to celebrate too soon. "Prepare boarding parties," she ordered. "It is time to show them what humans can do up close." In the Marine Bay, Sergeant Major Diallo heard the order and smiled that Predator's smile again. She chambered around in her rifle and looked at her squad. "You heard the Admiral," she said. "Let us go introduce ourselves." The drop pods launched. 30 soldiers, hurtling through space toward an enemy cruiser. Behind them, the battle raged. Ahead of them, hundreds of Sketh warriors waited, and the wolves of Earth came hungry. Warlord Kethrix had ruled his fleet for 30 cycles. He had conquered 12 star systems. He had harvested millions of lives to feed the Dominion's eternal hunger for hosts. He had never lost a battle. He had never known fear. Now, standing on the bridge of his flagship, watching impossible ships appear from nowhere and tear through his formation, he felt something cold crawling up his spine, something he had not felt since he was a larva, hiding from the adult warriors who would eat the weak. Fear. "Warlord!" his sensor officer screamed. "They came out of FTL directly into our formation. That should be impossible. The calculations alone would take—" "I know what it should take," Kethrix roared. His massive claws gripped the railing of his command platform hard enough to bend the metal. "Return fire. All ships, return fire now." But it was too late for coordinated defense. The human ships had appeared in the worst possible positions for the Sketh, and the best possible positions for attackers. They were too close for the heavy weapons to track, too fast for the targeting systems to lock on, and they were shooting with a fury that Kethrix had never seen from any species. On the view screen, he watched the cruiser Endless Hunger take a full volley of human weapons to its engine section. The massive ship shuddered. Explosions ripped through its hull. Then its lights went dark, and it began to drift, powerless and helpless. 2 ships crippled in the first minute of battle. Kethrix could not believe it. "What species are these?" he demanded. "What are we fighting?" His tactical officer looked up from his console. His mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. "Warlord." The energy signatures matched Terran vessels. "These are humans. Humans." The word spread through the bridge like a disease. Kethrix saw his crew flinch, saw their confidence shatter, saw warriors who had faced death 1,000 times suddenly look like frightened larvae. He knew why. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories about humans. They came from a world of nightmares, a planet where the gravity would crush a sketh flat, where the air itself was poison to most life forms, where the water was filled with acid and the ground crawled with predators. The humans had not just survived that world, they had conquered it. And then they had come to the stars, bringing with them all the violence and determination that had kept them alive. "They are just another prey species," Kethrix said, trying to sound confident. "They bleed like anyone else. They die like anyone else. All ships, focus fire on the largest human vessel. Destroy their leader, and the rest will scatter." It was a good plan. It was a logical plan. It was the kind of plan that had won Kethrix every battle he had ever fought. It did not work. The human flagship, the Perseverance, did not try to avoid the concentrated fire. Instead, it flew directly toward Kethrix's own ship, guns blazing, shields flaring with each impact. It took hits that would have crippled a Velen vessel. It kept coming. Its weapons never stopped firing. Its course never wavered. And then, from its belly, small objects launched toward Kethrix's ship. Dozens of them. Tiny pods, burning through space on columns of fire. "Boarding pods," his tactical officer screamed. "They are launching boarding pods." Kethrix felt his heart stop. Boarding actions were his favorite tactic. Sketh warriors were massive, powerful, and equipped with natural weapons that could tear through most species like paper. No one boarded a Sketh ship. No one was crazy enough to try. Until now. "All hands, prepare to repel boarders," he commanded. "Security teams to all entry points. Kill anything that comes through." But even as he gave the orders, doubt gnawed at him. The humans were doing everything wrong. They were supposed to be afraid. They were supposed to run or negotiate or surrender. That was what prey did. That was the natural order. These humans did not seem to understand the natural order. The boarding pods hit his ship's hull with a sound like thunder. Kethrix felt the vibrations through the deck plating. Then came the sounds of cutting, of metal screaming as the humans forced their way through. And then came the gunfire. Sergeant Major Aisha Diallo was the first through the breach. The moment the hull opened, she was moving, her rifle up and ready, her eyes scanning for targets. The corridor beyond was dark and filled with a strange mist that her helmet's sensors identified as a Sketh atmospheric preference. Low oxygen, high humidity, designed to weaken non-Sketh intruders. Her suit's life support compensated automatically. She barely noticed the difference. 2 Sketh warriors waited at the far end of the corridor. They were exactly as the briefings had described, 3 meters tall, 8-limbed, covered in natural armor that looked like black stone. Their mandibles dripped with venom. Their claws gleamed in the emergency lighting. They roared and charged. Diallo did not hesitate. She fired 3 bursts, center mass, and threw herself to the side as the first warrior reached her position. The rounds punched through the Sketh's armor like it was not there. The warrior stumbled, ichor spraying from its wounds, but it kept coming. It swung one massive claw at her head. She ducked. The claw passed so close she felt the wind of it. She rolled, came up on one knee, and fired again. This time she aimed for the joints where the legs met the body. The warrior collapsed, its limbs no longer responding. The second warrior was already on her. It grabbed her rifle with 2 of its arms, trying to wrench it away. Its other arm slashed at her armor, leaving deep gouges in the composite material. Its mandibles snapped at her faceplate, close enough that she could see the venom dripping from them. She let go of the rifle. The Sketh was expecting her to fight for it. Instead, she drew her knife and drove it upward, into the soft joint between the warrior's head and body. The blade was made of a special alloy, designed to cut through almost anything. It did its job. The Sketh made a gurgling sound and fell. Behind Diallo, her squad poured through the breach. 30 Marines, spreading out in tactical formation, weapons ready. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, covering each other's blind spots. They did not waste time on speeches or battle cries. They simply killed. "Move up," Diallo ordered, retrieving her rifle from the dead Sketh's grip. "Our objective is the bridge. Stay together, watch your corners, and remember, they are big, but we are faster." The squad advanced. More Sketh came to meet them. The corridors filled with the sounds of gunfire and screaming and the wet thud of bodies hitting the deck. On the bridge of the Sketh flagship, Kethrix watched the internal sensors with growing disbelief. The human boarders were tearing through his warriors. Not just fighting them, slaughtering them. His security teams outnumbered the humans 5-1, and they were losing. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They are so small. So weak." His tactical officer shook his head. "They are not weak, Warlord. Look at the sensor readings. Their muscles are denser than ours. Their bones are reinforced with some kind of mineral compound. Their reaction times are faster than anything I have ever seen." He paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "And they do not stop. We have killed several of them, but the rest just keep coming. They do not retreat. They do not hesitate. It is like fighting a natural disaster." Kethrix stared at the display. One of the humans, a small female, had taken a blade through her shoulder. Any Sketh would have fallen from such a wound. This human had pulled the blade out, thrown it back at her attacker, and kept shooting with her other arm. Another human had been cornered by 6 warriors. Instead of surrendering, he had pulled something from his belt and charged directly at them. The explosion had killed him, and all 6 Sketh. "They are insane," Kethrix said. "No, Warlord." His tactical officer's voice was quiet, almost respectful. "They are Deathworlders. This is what they evolved to do. They come from a world where survival was never guaranteed, where every day was a fight. They are not afraid of death, because death has always been close to them. It is an old friend." Kethrix turned away from the display. Through the viewport, he could see the rest of the battle. 3 more of his cruisers were crippled now. Only 2 remained fully functional, and they were fighting desperately against the human ships. The Singing Meridian, his prize, drifted forgotten in the chaos. He had come here to harvest prey. He had found something else entirely. "Open a channel to the human commander," he ordered. "Warlord? Do it." The communications officer obeyed. A moment later, a human face appeared on the main view screen. It was an older female, her hair gray, her eyes hard. She looked at Kethrix with an expression that he could not read. "Warlord Kethrix," she said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I am Admiral Chen Wei-Lin of the United Earth ship Perseverance. You have 90 seconds to withdraw your forces and release the Villan civilians. This is not a negotiation." Kethrix felt his rage building. Who was this creature to give him orders? He was a warlord of the Dominion. He had conquered worlds. "You are outnumbered," he shouted. "You have 12 small ships against my 6 cruisers. You cannot. 80 seconds. You do not understand. The Dominion will send more ships. They will hunt you across the galaxy. They will." 60 seconds. Kethrix's claws dug into his command platform. The metal groaned under the pressure. Around him, his bridge crew watched in stunned silence. No one had ever spoken to a warlord like this. No one had ever dared. But the human did not seem to care about Sketh pride or Sketh power. She simply waited, counting down the seconds, as if Kethrix's threats meant nothing at all. "Warlord," his tactical officer said quietly, "the human boarders have breached the secondary checkpoint. They will reach the bridge in approximately 10 minutes. If we do not retreat now." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Kethrix looked at the view screen, at the human admiral with her gray hair and hard eyes. She was not bluffing. He could see it in her face. She would destroy his fleet. She would board his ship. She would kill him personally if she had to. And she would not lose a moment's sleep over it, because she was protecting prey. And to a Deathworlder, that was worth any cost. "All ships," Kethrix said, his voice hollow. "Retreat. Pull back to the Dominion border." "Warlord," one of his officers protested. "We cannot just—" "We can, and we will," Kethrix roared. "This fight is over. We have lost." It was the hardest thing he had ever said. He had never lost. He had never retreated. But he was not stupid enough to die for pride when the enemy was already at his door. The Sketh ships began to pull back. Their engines flared as they turned away from the battle, leaving their crippled sisters behind. On the human vessels, weapons continued to fire, harrying them, punishing them for every second they delayed. Aboard the Singing Meridian, Ambassador Yelthari watched through cracked viewports as the impossible happened. The Sketh were running. The monsters who had been circling her ship, preparing to harvest her people, were fleeing like frightened animals, and the creatures chasing them, the ones the galaxy called monsters, were letting them go. Once it was clear the Sketh were retreating, the human ships stopped firing. They did not pursue. They did not try to destroy the fleeing enemy. They simply turned toward the Singing Meridian and approached slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Ambassador, Corrin breathed, his bioluminescence blazing with emotion. They came. They actually came. Yelthari could not speak. Her throat was tight with feelings she could not name. Relief, yes. Gratitude. But also something else. Something like wonder. She had called for help from monsters, expecting destruction. Instead, she had found salvation. A communication came through on a gentle frequency, not the emergency one she had used. A human voice, translated by computer but still warm, still kind. Velen vessel Singing Meridian. This is the United Earth ship Perseverance. We received your distress call. Are you in need of assistance? Yelthari laughed. It was a strange sound, half joy and half tears. Yes, she managed to say. Yes, we need assistance. Our engines are destroyed. Our life support is failing. We have wounded. We have children who are frightened. We need everything. There was a pause. Then the human voice returned, still warm, still kind. Help is on the way. We are sending medical teams and engineers. Stay calm. You are safe now. Safe. Yelthari had not felt safe in days. She had not expected to ever feel safe again. But somehow, hearing that word from a human voice, she believed it. The wolves of Earth had come, and against all expectations, they had brought not destruction, but mercy. On the bridge of the Perseverance, Admiral Chen watched the Sketh fleet retreat into the darkness of space. Her hands were steady. Her face was calm. But inside, relief was washing through her like warm water. They had won. 2,000 lives saved. The monsters driven back. And the cost. She would count the cost later. For now, there was work to do. All ships, stand down from battle stations. Begin rescue and recovery operations. I want medical teams on that civilian vessel as fast as possible. And someone find me a Velen translator. We have people to save. The bridge crew sprang into action. Around her, the fleet shifted from war mode to rescue mode. Weapons powered down. Medical shuttles launched. Engineers prepared to cross to the damaged vessel and begin repairs. Chen allowed herself a small smile. This was the part she liked best. Not the fighting, but the saving. Not the destruction, but the help. The galaxy called humans monsters. They called them Deathworlders. They feared them and avoided them and wrote warnings about them. But today, those monsters had answered a call for help. Today, they had saved lives instead of taking them. Today, they had proven that being dangerous did not mean being cruel. And somewhere in the void, the message would spread. The story would be told. And the next time someone was in trouble, the next time someone needed help, they would remember what the humans had done. They would remember that the wolves of Earth could be guardians as well as hunters. They would remember, and they would not be afraid to ask for help. The Sketh flagship drifted dead in space. Its engines were destroyed. Its weapons were silent. Its crew was either dead or captured. But the fighting was not over yet. Sergeant Major Aisha Diallo moved through the corridors with her remaining squad. 18 Marines. She had started with 30. 12 were gone now. Some dead, some wounded badly enough to be pulled back to the medical shuttles. Each loss burned in her chest like a hot coal, but she did not have time for grief. The bridge was just ahead, and Warlord Kethrix was still there. Until he was captured, the mission was not complete. "Contacts ahead," whispered Private Chen, the squad's point man. He was young, barely 20 years old, but he moved like a veteran. The battle had aged him. Multiple heat signatures behind the blast door. At least 20 hostiles. Diallo nodded. 20 Sketh warriors, making their last stand to protect their leader. They would fight to the death. They had nothing left to lose. Neither did she. "Grenades first," she ordered quietly. Flash and frag. Then we go in hard and fast. Stay low, aim for the joints, and watch each other's backs. Questions? No one had questions. They had been doing this for hours now. They knew the drill. Corporal Jackson moved to the door controls. His armor was dented and scarred from a dozen impacts. Blood leaked from a wound on his arm that he had refused to have treated. When Diallo had ordered him to fall back, he had simply said, "Not until this is done." She had not argued. "Ready?" Jackson asked. 18 Marines raised their weapons. 18 voices answered. "Ready." Jackson hit the door controls. The blast door slid open. For half a second, there was silence as both sides registered what was happening. Then, the corridor exploded into chaos. Grenades flew through the opening. Flashbangs detonated with blinding light and deafening sound. Fragmentation grenades followed, filling the air with deadly shrapnel. Sketh screamed as metal tore through their bodies. Then the Marines charged. Diallo was first through the door, as always. She moved low and fast, her rifle spitting fire in controlled bursts. A Sketh warrior loomed out of the smoke, its claws swinging. She ducked under the strike and put 3 rounds into its face. It fell, and she was already moving past, already finding the next target. The bridge was a large circular room, filled with consoles and displays. In the center, on an elevated platform, stood Warlord Kethrix. He was massive, even for a Sketh. His natural armor was thicker than the others, marked with scars from 100 battles. He watched the humans invade his bridge with an expression that might have been hatred, or might have been respect. Around him, his personal guard fought desperately. These were not ordinary warriors. They were his best, chosen for their size and ferocity. Each one was a killing machine that had slaughtered dozens of other species. Against ordinary prey, they would have been unstoppable. But these were not ordinary prey. Private Zhang took a claw through her chest armor. The blow should have killed her. Instead, the reinforced composite absorbed most of the impact, and Zhang responded by shoving her rifle into the Sketh's open mouth and pulling the trigger. The warrior fell, and Zhang kept fighting, blood seeping from the crack in her armor. Corporal Williams was lifted off his feet by 2 warriors working together. They tried to tear him apart, pulling his arms in opposite directions. Williams screamed in pain, but even as he screamed, he managed to pull a grenade from his belt with his teeth, arm it with his chin, and spit it into the face of one of his attackers. The explosion killed the Sketh and threw Williams free. He landed hard, one arm clearly broken, and immediately began crawling toward his dropped rifle. Specialist Torres found herself surrounded by 3 warriors. She had lost her rifle somewhere in the fighting. She had lost her knife, too. All she had left was her sidearm, a small pistol with 8 rounds remaining. She shot the first warrior in the eye, ducked under the second strike, and jammed the pistol into the third's throat before pulling the trigger twice. Then she picked up a fallen Sketh blade and kept fighting. Kethrix watched all of this with growing horror. He had seen many species fight. He had studied their tactics, their strengths, their weaknesses. He knew how prey behaved when cornered. These humans did not behave like prey. They did not panic when wounded. They did not freeze when outnumbered. They fought like demons, like forces of nature, like beings who did not understand the concept of surrender. They helped each other constantly, covering their wounded, dragging their fallen to safety, never leaving anyone behind. And they did not stop. No matter how many times they were hit, no matter how badly they were injured, they kept coming. It was as if death itself was afraid to claim them. "Warlord," one of his guards screamed. "We cannot hold. There are too many, too many." Kethrix looked at the human attackers. 18 of them. 18 small, soft creatures against his 20 elite guards. And his guards were losing. "Then we die fighting," he roared, raising his own blade. "I will not surrender to prey." He leaped from his platform, directly at the nearest human. It was the female who had led the assault, the one with the dark skin and the predator's eyes. She saw him coming and raised her rifle, but she was too slow. His blade swept down toward her head, and stopped. Diallo had caught his arm, both hands wrapped around his wrist, muscles straining against his strength. She should not have been able to do this. She was half his size, a fraction of his weight. The physics made no sense, but she held him anyway. "Surrender," she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "Your fleet is gone. Your ship is captured. Your warriors are dead or dying. There is no reason for more killing. Kethrix stared at her. This tiny creature, holding back his strength, speaking to him like an equal. It was impossible. It was insulting. It was impressive. You are strong, he admitted. Stronger than any prey I have faced. We are not prey, Diallo replied. We never were. Around them, the last of the Sketh guards fell. The humans had taken casualties too. Bodies lay on the deck, both species mixed together in death. But the Marines still standing outnumbered the Sketh who remained. Kethrix looked at the carnage, at the blood and the bodies and the wreckage of his command. He had been a warlord for 30 cycles. He had never lost. He had never been defeated in personal combat. Until now, slowly, he lowered his blade. Diallo released his arm, stepping back but keeping her rifle ready. The remaining Sketh, seeing their leaders surrender, dropped their own weapons. It was over. Sergeant Major, Private Chen said, the bridge is secured. All hostiles neutralized or surrendered. Diallo nodded. She did not take her eyes off Kethrix. Get the wounded to the shuttles, and secure these prisoners. Carefully. I want them alive for questioning. As her Marines moved to obey, Kethrix spoke again. Why? Diallo looked at him. Why what? Why did you come? The Velan are not your people. They are not even your allies. The Galactic Council tells everyone to avoid humans, to never ask for your help. Why did you answer their call? Why? It was a good question. Diallo had asked herself the same thing, back when the order had first come through. Why risk their lives for strangers? Why fight and die for people who feared them? She thought about it for a moment. Then she answered, there is a saying on our world. It goes, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We are not always good. We have done terrible things in our history, but we try to be better. We try to help when we can. She paused. And when children are in danger, we do not ask who they belong to. We just act. Kethrix was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. You are strange creatures, he said. Terrible and strange. I do not understand you. But I think I am glad I did not kill you. The feeling is mutual, Diallo said. She gestured to her Marines. Take him. As the humans led the captured warlord away, Diallo allowed herself a moment to breathe. Her body ached in 100 places. Her armor was cracked and dented. She had taken wounds she had not even noticed during the fighting. And now they all demanded attention at once. But they had won. The ship was theirs. The Sketh were defeated. And somewhere on the civilian vessel, 2,000 people were safe because of what they had done. It was worth it. All the pain and the blood and the loss. It was worth it. Outside the captured flagship, the rescue operation was in full swing. Medical shuttles had docked with the Singing Meridian, and human doctors were moving through the damaged vessel, treating injured Velan and providing emergency supplies. Dr. Sarah Kim was one of the first medical officers to board. She had been a trauma surgeon for 20 years, first on Earth and then in space. She had treated every kind of wound imaginable. She had saved lives that should have been lost and lost lives that should have been saved, but she had never worked on Velan before. Their biology was completely different from humans. Their blood was copper-based instead of iron. Their organs were in different places. Their bones were hollow, like birds. Everything she knew about medicine had to be adjusted on the fly. And yet, somehow, it worked. Temperature stabilizing, she announced, checking the readouts on her portable medical scanner. The Velan child in front of her was young, maybe the equivalent of 5 or 6 human years. He had been injured when a section of the hull collapsed, crushing his leg. Any Velan doctor would have amputated. Kim was not a Velan doctor. The bone is shattered, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. But it is still hollow. I can insert a support structure, let it heal around the implant. She looked at the child's mother, a female Velan who was watching with wide, terrified eyes. Your son will keep his leg. He may need therapy, but he will walk again. The mother made a sound that the translator could not fully capture. Joy and relief and gratitude all mixed together. She reached out and touched Kim's hand, a gesture that seemed instinctive, crossing all boundaries of species and culture. Thank you, she said. Thank you for saving my child. Kim smiled. That is what we do. Throughout the Singing Meridian, similar scenes played out. Human doctors treated wounds they had never seen before. Human engineers worked on systems they had never studied. Human soldiers stood guard, protecting civilians who had been told their whole lives to fear humanity. And everywhere, the Valon watched with amazement. They had expected monsters. They had expected violence and cruelty and cold efficiency. Instead, they found compassion. They found kindness. They found people who treated strangers like family and worked through exhaustion because lives depended on them. First Navigator Corin worked alongside a human engineer named Carlos to repair a critical life support junction. The work was difficult, requiring both of them to squeeze into a tiny maintenance shaft and manipulate components that were barely within reach. "You are very skilled," Corin said, watching Carlos reconnect a power coupling with practiced ease. "Have you done this kind of repair before?" Carlos laughed. "Not on a Valen ship, no. But broken is broken, you know. Once you understand how things are supposed to work, fixing them is just a matter of finding the problem and solving it." "That sounds very human." "Maybe. Or maybe it is just universal." Carlos finished the connection and checked his readings. "There. Life support should be stable now. Not perfect, but it will keep everyone breathing until we can get you to a proper shipyard." Corin's bioluminescence flickered with gratitude. "Why are you doing this? We are strangers to you. We have been told our whole lives that humans are dangerous, that we should never trust you, and yet here you are, risking your lives to help us." Carlos put away his tools and looked at Corin with an expression that was hard to read. "Can I tell you something? A story from my world? Please. When I was a boy, there was a flood in my village. The river overflowed and washed away homes. People were trapped, drowning, dying. And do you know who came to help? Not the government, not the military, not anyone official. Just regular people, neighbors, strangers. They formed human chains to pull people from the water. They gave food and shelter to families they had never met. They worked for days without sleep because there were people who needed them." He paused, remembering. "When I asked my mother why everyone was helping, she said something I have never forgotten. She said, 'Because that is what people do. When someone is in trouble, you help them. It does not matter if you know them. It does not matter if they can pay you back. You help because it is right.' I have tried to live by that my whole life." Corin was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "The galaxy says humans are monsters. Maybe we are," Carlos admitted. "We have done monstrous things. Our history is full of war and cruelty and suffering. But we have also done beautiful things. We have created art and music and medicine. We have explored the stars. We have reached out our hands to people in need, even when it cost us everything." He smiled. "We are complicated, like everyone else. I think, Corin said slowly, "that the galaxy does not understand you at all. Maybe not. But that is okay. We do not always understand ourselves." They shared a moment of quiet understanding. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different cultures. And yet, in that moment, they were not so different at all. On the bridge of the Perseverance, Admiral Chen received reports from across the fleet. The battle was over. The Sketh were gone. The captured ships were secure. The civilian vessel was stable. And the cost? 47 dead, Commander Okonkwo reported quietly. 206 wounded, 32 seriously. 2 ships destroyed, 3 heavily damaged. Chen closed her eyes. 47 families who would receive terrible news. 47 empty bunks. 47 names to be added to the memorial wall. They had saved 2,000 lives. It was worth it. She had to believe it was worth it. "Begin preparations for departure," she ordered. "We will escort the Singing Meridian to Valan space. I want full honors for our fallen when we return to port." "Yes, Admiral." Okonkwo hesitated, then added, "Admiral, the Valan ambassador is requesting to speak with you. She wishes to express her gratitude personally." Chen opened her eyes. She was tired, so tired. She wanted nothing more than to retreat to her quarters and sleep for a week. But there were duties that came before rest. "Send her up," she said. A few minutes later, Ambassador Yelthari entered the bridge. She was smaller than Chen had expected, fragile-looking, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. She moved carefully, clearly unused to the slightly higher gravity of a human ship. "Admiral Chen," she said, her voice soft but steady, I do not have words to thank you for what you have done. Chen stood and walked to meet her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in the ambassador's face, the strain of the past days. She could see the gratitude, yes, but also something else, wonder, and maybe a little fear. No thanks are necessary, Chen said. We did what anyone should do. What anyone would do if they heard your call. That is not true, Yelthari replied. The Galactic Council would not have come. They would have debated and discussed and ultimately done nothing. Only you came. Only humans. Chen did not know how to respond to that. It was probably true. The Council was good at many things, but quick action was not one of them. We are not heroes, she finally said. We are just people. People who believe that when someone asks for help, you answer. Yelthari reached out and touched Chen's arm. It was a gesture of deep respect in Velen culture, Chen knew. A gesture normally reserved for family or close friends. Then you are better people than anyone told us, Yelthari said. And I will make sure the galaxy knows it. Chen smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Just get your people home safely, Ambassador. That is all the thanks we need. Yelthari nodded. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Admiral? May I ask you something? Of course. The galaxy calls you Deathworlders. They say you are dangerous beyond measure. They say you are to be feared. She looked back, her glowing eyes meeting Chen's. But you do not seem like monsters to me. What are you really? Chen thought about the question. She thought about humanity's long and bloody history. The wars, the cruelties, the terrible things they had done to each other and to their world. And she thought about the other things, the kindness, the compassion, the stubborn refusal to give up, even when all hope seemed lost. We are both, she said finally. Monsters and guardians. Destroyers and protectors. We are capable of terrible things and beautiful things. Sometimes at the same time, we are complicated. She looked out the viewport at the stars, but when children are in danger, when innocent people are crying for help, we remember which kind of monster we want to be. And we choose. Yelthari smiled. It was a strange expression on her alien face, but Chen understood it perfectly. Then I am glad, the ambassador said, that you chose to be guardians. She left. Chen turned back to the viewport and watched the stars wheel slowly past. Somewhere out there, the Sketh were licking their wounds and planning revenge. Somewhere out there, other threats waited, other dangers, other battles to be fought. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, 2,000 people were safe. 47 heroes would be remembered, and the wolves of Earth had proven that they could be something more than monsters. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The journey to Velen space took 11 days. 11 days of repairs and recovery, of healing wounds both physical and emotional. 11 days of 2,000 Velan civilians living alongside their human rescuers, learning things about the feared Deathworlders that no one in the galaxy had ever known. The singing Meridian traveled slowly, its damaged engines capable only of gentle acceleration. Around it, like protective wolves guarding a flock, the human fleet maintained a constant escort. No Sketh ship appeared, no danger threatened. The stars themselves seemed to part before them, opening a safe path home. Ambassador Yelthari spent most of those 11 days with the humans. She sat in their mess halls and listened to their stories. She visited their medical bays and watched their doctors work. She walked their corridors and observed how they lived, how they laughed, how they cried for their fallen friends. What she learned changed everything she thought she knew. The humans were not monsters. They were people. Strange people, yes. People who ate things that would poison most species and called it breakfast. People who exercised by lifting heavy objects until their muscles tore, then waited for the muscles to heal stronger. People who kept small predators in their homes for companionship and let them sleep in their beds. But they were also people who cried at sad stories. People who made jokes in the darkest moments because laughter was how they survived. People who held each other when the grief became too heavy to carry alone. They were people who had buried 47 of their own in the cold void between stars, holding ceremonies that spoke of loss and love and the hope of reunion in whatever came after death. Yelthari attended one of those ceremonies. She stood among the human crew as they said goodbye to a young woman named Sarah Park, who had died in the assault on the Sketh flagship. She listened to the words spoken by Park's friends and family, words of grief and gratitude and fierce, burning pride. She watched as the coffin was launched into space, becoming a star among stars, forever traveling the void that Sarah Park had given her life to protect, and she cried. Velen tears were different from human tears. They glowed with soft blue light, trailing down her face like falling stars, but they meant the same thing: grief, respect, the acknowledgement of a sacrifice that could never be repaid. After the ceremony, Admiral Chen found Yelthari standing alone by a viewport, watching the stars. "You did not have to come," Chen said. "I know our customs must seem strange to you." Yelthari shook her head. "Your customs are not strange. Death is the same for all species. Loss is the same. Grief is the same." She paused. "Sarah Park died protecting people she had never met. That is not strange. That is beautiful." Chen stood beside her, looking out at the same stars. She was 23 years old. She wanted to be a teacher after her service ended. She had a family waiting for her on Earth. "I am sorry. Do not be." She knew the risks. She made her choice. Chen's voice was steady, but there was weight behind it. The weight of command. The weight of sending people to die. All of them knew. They came anyway. "Why?" Yelthari asked. It was the question that had haunted her since the rescue. The question she could not stop asking. Why did they come? Why did you all come? You did not know us. You did not owe us anything. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Let me tell you about Earth." She spoke for over an hour. She told Yelthari about a world of fire and ice, of storms and earthquakes, of predators and diseases and 1,000 ways to die. She told her about the early humans, small and weak, fighting for survival against creatures that should have destroyed them. She told her about how those early humans survived, not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by working together, by protecting each other, by developing a fierce loyalty to their tribe that made them willing to die for strangers who shared their fire. "That instinct never left us," Chen said. "Even when we spread across our world and fought each other, even when we did terrible things in the name of tribe and nation and ideology, that instinct remained. When the flood comes, we save each other. When the fire burns, we rush toward it to pull people free. When the helpless cry out, we answer." "Even strangers?" Yelthari asked. "Especially strangers." Chen turned to face her. "On Earth, there is a concept called the Good Samaritan. It comes from an old story about a traveler who was attacked and left for dead. Many people passed him by. They had reasons not to help. They were busy. They were afraid. They did not want to get involved. But one stranger stopped. He cared for the wounded man. He paid for his healing. He asked nothing in return." She smiled, a tired but genuine expression. "That story is thousands of years old, and we are still telling it. Because that is who we want to be. Not the people who pass by, but the ones who stop. Not the ones who calculate the cost, but the ones who simply help." Yelthari thought about this. She thought about everything she had seen in the past 11 days. The doctors working through exhaustion, the engineers repairing systems they had never studied, the soldiers who had died for people they had never met. "You are not what we were told," she said finally. "The Galactic Council says you are dangerous, unpredictable. They say you should be avoided. They are not entirely wrong," Chen admitted. "We are dangerous. We are unpredictable. And yes, you should probably be careful around us. We have done terrible things in our history. We could do them again. But we are also capable of great kindness, great sacrifice, great love. We are complicated creatures, Ambassador. We carry both darkness and light inside us. The question is always which one we choose to act on. And you chose light." Chen nodded slowly. "This time, yes. We chose light." Yelthari reached out and touched Chen's hand. It was a gesture she had made before, but this time it felt different. Not just gratitude. Something deeper. Something like kinship. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for saving us, but for showing us who you really are." Chen squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for giving us the chance." They stood together in silence, watching the stars roll past. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different histories. And yet, in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. The singing meridian arrived at Velen Prime on the morning of the 12th day. As the ship entered orbit, surrounded by its human escorts, the communications arrays filled with voices. questions and concerns and joyful cries of relief. The families of 2,000 civilians. Learning that their loved ones were alive, Yelthari stood on the bridge of her damaged ship and watched her world turn slowly beneath them. Blue and green and silver, beautiful in the way only a homeworld could be. She had thought she might never see it again. "Ambassador," Corin said, his voice thick with emotion. "The High Council is requesting your presence. They want a full report on what happened. I am sure they do." Yelthari straightened her robes and composed her expression. There would be difficult questions. There would be debates and arguments and political maneuvering, but there would also be truth. And she intended to speak nothing but truth. "Inform the Council that I will address them personally, and extend an invitation to Admiral Chen. I want her to speak as well." Corin's bioluminescence flickered with surprise. The Council has never allowed an outsider to address them, especially not a human. Then it is time for that to change. The shuttle ride to the surface was short but tense. Yelthari sat beside Admiral Chen, watching the human woman's face as they descended through the clouds. Chen showed no nervousness, no hesitation. She simply looked at the approaching ground with the calm assessment of someone who had faced many challenges and expected to face many more. "Are you prepared for this?" Yelthari asked. "The Council can be difficult," Chen smiled. "I have testified before the United Earth Senate. I have argued with admirals and politicians and bureaucrats who thought they knew better than the people actually doing the work. I think I can handle a few more." Yelthari found herself smiling as well. "You might be surprised. Velan politicians can be very stubborn. So can human ones. Maybe that is something all species have in common." The shuttle landed in the Grand Plaza, where thousands of Velan had gathered to witness the return. They crowded against the barriers, their bioluminescence creating a sea of shifting colors. They called out names, hoping to see their families emerge. They wept and laughed and embraced each other as the survivors disembarked. Yelthari watched the reunions with tears in her eyes. Mothers and fathers, children and siblings, lovers and friends, all the connections that made life worth living, preserved against impossible odds. Because the humans had come, the council chambers were vast and ancient, carved from the living rock of a mountain that had stood for millions of years. The 12 members of the High Council sat on elevated platforms, looking down at the floor where speakers presented their cases. It was designed to intimidate, to remind visitors of the weight and dignity of Velan civilization. Yelthari walked to the center of the chamber without flinching. She had stood here many times before. She knew its power and its limitations. "Counselors," she said, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the room. "I come before you to report on the attack on the diplomatic vessel Singing Meridian, and the rescue that followed." She told them everything. The ambush, the damage, the terrifying hours of waiting for death, and then the arrival of the humans. Bursting out of faster-than-light travel directly into the enemy formation, attacking without hesitation, boarding enemy ships, fighting hand-to-hand against creatures twice their size. She told them about the 47 humans who had died. She recited their names, one by one, because she had memorized them all, because they deserved to be remembered. And then she told them about what happened after the fighting stopped. "The humans did not leave after they defeated the Sketh," she said. "They stayed. They sent doctors to heal our wounded and engineers to repair our ship. They shared their food and their water and their warmth. They treated us not as strangers, not as aliens, but as people." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I was taught, as we all were taught, that humans are dangerous, that they are Deathworlders who should be avoided at all costs, that they are monsters who would destroy us if given the chance." Her voice grew stronger. "I was wrong. We were all wrong." A murmur ran through the council. One of the elder members, a female named High Counselor Tethys, leaned forward. "Ambassador, your experience was clearly harrowing. But one act of rescue does not change the fundamental nature of a species. The humans are still Deathworlders. They are still capable of great violence." "Yes," Yelthari agreed. "They are capable of great violence. I saw them fight. I saw them kill. They are more dangerous than anything I have ever witnessed." She smiled. "But they are also capable of great compassion. I saw them cry for their dead. I saw them sacrifice themselves for strangers. I saw them choose to be guardians when they could have been destroyers." She turned and gestured to Admiral Chen, who had been waiting quietly at the back of the chamber. "With the Council's permission, I would like to present Admiral Chen Wei-lin of the United Earth Ship Perseverance. She commanded the rescue mission. She lost 47 of her people to save 2,000 of ours. I believe her words deserve to be heard. The council members exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. But Yelthari's account had affected them. She could see it in their expressions. Slowly, High Counselor Tethys nodded. Admiral Chen may speak. Chen walked to the center of the chamber with the same calm confidence she had shown on her ship. She looked up at the council without fear or deference, meeting their eyes as equals. Counselors, she said, I am not here to defend humanity. We have done things that cannot be defended. Our history is full of war and cruelty. We have hurt each other in ways that other species cannot imagine. We are not a perfect people. We never claimed to be. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But we are a people who try. We make mistakes, and we learn from them. We fall down, and we get back up. We fight each other, and then we fight side by side. We are complicated. We are messy. We are everything the galaxy says we are, and more. And when we heard Ambassador Yelthari's signal, when we learned that 2,000 innocent people were going to die, we did not calculate the costs. We did not debate the politics. We simply came, because that is what you do when someone needs help. You help them. She looked around the chamber, meeting each council member's eyes in turn. I cannot promise that humans will always be kind. I cannot promise that we will never be dangerous, but I can promise this. When the helpless cry out, when the innocent are threatened, when the darkness closes in and there seems to be no hope, we will answer. We will come. We will fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, because that is who we are. Not monsters, not angels, just humans, doing our best to be better than we were yesterday. The chamber was silent. Yelthari watched the council members, trying to read their expressions. They were still uncertain, still cautious, but something had changed. A crack in the wall of fear that had surrounded humanity for so long. High Counselor Tethys finally spoke. Admiral Chen, you lost 47 soldiers in this rescue. Do you consider that sacrifice worthwhile? Chen did not hesitate. Yes. Every one of my people who died would tell you the same. They did not die for politics or profit. They died because children were in danger. They died because it was the right thing to do. There is no greater honor than that. Another long silence. Then Tethys did something that surprised everyone in the chamber. She stood up from her platform and bowed, a gesture of profound respect in Velen culture. Admiral Chen, she said, on behalf of the High Council and the Velen Collective, I thank you. I thank every human who came to our aid, and I apologize for the fear and distrust that we have shown your species. No apology is necessary, Chen replied. Fear of the unknown is natural. We have felt it ourselves, many times. What matters is what you do when you move past the fear. Tethys nodded slowly. Then let us begin to move past it. Together, the council session lasted for several more hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. By the end of the day, the Velen Collective had officially extended a hand of friendship to humanity. Trade agreements were proposed. Cultural exchanges were suggested. A new era of cooperation was beginning. That night, there was a celebration in the Grand Plaza. Thousands of Velen gathered to honor their rescuers. Human soldiers and doctors and engineers walked among them, accepting thanks and sharing stories. The air was filled with music and laughter, and the glow of countless Velen lighting up the night. Admiral Chen stood at the edge of the plaza, watching her people mingle with the Velen. She had a drink in her hand that tasted like nothing she had ever experienced. Sweet and sharp and somehow warm, a gift from a Velen child who had wanted to thank her for saving his mother. Ambassador Yelthari found her there, looking out at the celebration with a quiet smile. You should join them, Yelthari said. They want to honor you. They are honoring us all, Chen replied. That is enough. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the celebration. Above them, the stars wheeled slowly across the sky, the same stars that had witnessed so much suffering and so much hope. What will you do now? Yelthari asked. Go back to our patrol route, I suppose. There are always people who need help somewhere, and we will be there when they call, even if they are strangers, even if the council warns them against you. Chen smiled. Especially then. Yelthari's bioluminescence flickered with warmth. You know, when I sent that signal, I was terrified. I thought I was calling monsters. I thought I was trading one death for another. And now I know the truth." She looked up at the stars, the same stars that had carried her desperate plea across the void. "The galaxy calls you Deathworlders. They say you are dangerous. They say you are to be feared. But I have seen what you really are." She turned to face Chen, her eyes glowing with conviction. "You are guardians. You are protectors. You are the ones who answer when all hope seems lost. You are not perfect, and you are not gentle. But when children cry in the darkness, you come, and that makes you something precious, something the galaxy needs." Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, she said, "Thank you. That means more than you know." They embraced, two beings from different worlds, united by an experience that had changed them both. When they parted, there were tears in both their eyes. "Safe travels, Admiral," Yelthari said. "And you, Ambassador. If you ever need us again, I know, I will call, and you will answer." Chen nodded. She turned and walked back toward the plaza, toward her people, toward the celebration that honored not just the living but the dead. Behind her, Yelthari watched until she disappeared into the crowd. Then the ambassador looked up at the stars once more. Somewhere out there, the story of what had happened was spreading. Ships were carrying it from system to system, world to world. The tale of the Deathworlders who had come to save strangers, the monsters who had chosen to be heroes. And somewhere in the void, other species were listening. Other civilizations were watching. And some of them, perhaps, were beginning to understand what Yelthari had learned. The wolves of Earth were not to be feared. They were to be called. Because when the darkness closed in and all hope seemed lost, they would answer. They would come. And they would fight until the last enemy was defeated or the last wolf fell. Because that was what Guardians did. And humanity, for all its flaws and all its failures, would always be Guardians. The stars shone down on a galaxy that was just beginning to understand. And in the hearts of 2,000 survivors, hope burned brighter than any sun. This was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning.